welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on Cars Radio 790 WKRD and iHeartMedia. Glad you're joining us today for a little discussion about the University of Louisville and some of the things going on at UofL, some of the research and other things happening at UofL. On the show today, unfortunately, little kids sometimes get cancer and need radiation treatments, and that radiation can impact their health in other ways, and we'll talk to UofL researchers about that. Also, could one epidemic protect us from another different epidemic? Could a flu epidemic, perhaps, somehow protect us from a hepatitis epidemic? Maybe. A UofL researcher will be here to explain his theory. But first, you're guilty of texting and driving. I know you do it. Well, Richard Lee is the head of the Center for Transportation Innovation at UofL, and he is studying distracted driving and here to tell us who does it the most. Richard, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, Mark.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right. Well, the Center for Transportation Innovation, what is that? Explain what that is.
Oh, it's a kind of university center that focuses on transportation-related research on traffic operations and safety.
Okay. I think the last time we talked, you were working on stoplights and traffic on Shelbyville Road, or doing research on that, right?
Yes. That was my previous research. Right now, my current research focuses on autonomous vehicle and also some intersection safety and also other like traffic safety related problems.
Okay, so you're working on that with I assume, contracts with the Department of Transportation, Kentucky Department of Transportation?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk about autonomous vehicles when you get that research done, because I'm really interested in that. And driverless cars is a big topic these days, right?
Definitely, we'll be talking about that after the project finishes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about what you have finished, and that is you've compiled a bunch of data, or you've looked at a bunch of data involving distracted driving. All right. So tell us a little bit about the study and how you got into it.
Yeah, sure. This study was completed with collaboration in University of Wisconsin-Madison with my previous colleagues, and this study was looking into the distracted fatalities nationwide. So it's investigating to the nations. It's published by the NITA. It's a database of all fatalities related to all conditions. So we looked into the conditions only related to the distraction. So and identified some interesting findings from that. Yeah.
And when you're talking about distractions while driving, what are everybody knows about texting and driving, but what are the other distractions that you looked at?
Correct. The texting and driving is the one of these contributing factors, so everybody knows that. And but the other distractors, including like eating, smoking, and mind wandering,
daydreaming, just
daydreaming,
looking
something like
around,
that.
not paying any attention.
Correct. So these are also some we call kind of an inner distraction. Okay, so there's some external distractions, such like looking at some objects and outside of your vehicles and looking at objects inside your vehicles. Text while driving, that's also one of these, and also adjusting some in-vehicle devices, and so you kind of move your focus of your eyes from the windshield to somewhere else in the vehicle.
All right. We're talking to Richard Lee, who's the head of the Center for Transportation Innovation at the University of Louisville Speed School of Engineering. We're talking about distracted driving in a study he did. All right, so you've got these 3 or 4 different kinds of distracted driving that you looked at. You looked at this database of all the fatal accidents. Was it fatal accidents, or did it also include injury accidents?
No, that's only fatal accidents.
Only fatal accidents.
So if I can describe that, that's about a factor on 18% of injury crashes and 10% of fatal fatalities crashes. Kind of distraction is a kind of a contributing factor for a large proportion of that.
So wait a minute. So distracted driving played a role in 10% of fatals.
10% fatal and 18% of injury.
Actually, that's less than I thought it might be, to be honest.
Okay.
What did you think when you found those numbers?
I think that's pretty reasonable because a lot of other crashes are caused by kind of curves and road departure crashes, intersection-related crashes, some other. But 10% of fatalities and 18% of injuries is a kind of a substantial proportion.
That's pretty hefty in your mind, anyways. Okay.
Yeah.
And what'd you find? So who is having these fatal crashes caused by distracted driving? Is it old people, young people, male, female? Who is it?
Old people, actually. So there's a trend on that. That's kind of very interesting. The internal distraction is increasing. I mean, the proportion of internal distraction is increasing from
When you say the proportion of internal distraction, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
So in terms of all distracted fatalities.
Okay, so
So
so the number of fatal crashes due to distracted driving has been increasing.
That's right. So it's been increasing from like 27% in 2010 to like 56% in 2013.
But I thought you said the distracted driving only accounted for 10% of the fatal accidents.
I mean, these are all, we are talking about the whole population of all fatalities caused by distraction.
Okay.
I mean, among all distracted crashes or fatalities, these are the proportion of different distractors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that telling you? You said older folks are the most guilty. So is that people over 60, people over 70? What?
We found that people over 80, they have a really high probability for distracted fatalities caused by like eating, drinking, and also loss of mind or something like that.
So they're the ones that are daydreaming.
That's right. Because of the reduced capacity as your age grows up, something like that.
Right. Your mental capacity declines as you get older. So they're the ones that are having the distracted driving. They're not on their cell phones.
No.
They're not texting while driving. They're
No.
eating, smoking, doing all the other distracted driving, right?
Yeah, usually it's the biggest contributor is that kind of loss of mind or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking with Richard Lee, head of the Center for Transportation Innovation at the University of Louisville, and his study on distracted driving. Now, what did you find in terms of the people that are using their phones,
Yep.
either talking on their phones or texting while driving? What did you find out?
So we found out that we also did an analysis on the like age and gender distribution while we look into the different distractor, including the text while driving. So we found the technology-related distractors has largest proportion in the like younger men and women.
Well,
So
no surprise there.
yeah, that's not surprising. But one of a little bit surprised me that's the women compares to men. I mean, younger women compares to younger men, they have a higher probability to be involved in like fatalities caused by like in-vehicle technology-related distraction.
So young women are
More likely
to die or be in a fatal crash because they're texting and driving
That's
than young
right.
guys.
Yeah, a little, but not too much, but it's significant. Yeah.
Huh. So is it statistically significant?
Yes.
So what did you think of that?
I think women are more likely be involved in texting messages compared to men.
Really? You think
That's my
that's your own
my
personal opinion based
interpretation.
on
Yeah.
the data,
Yeah.
but do your fellow researchers, have they found that to be true, that young
No.
women do more texting and driving than men do?
No, we didn't look into that. This is outside of our expertise. Yeah.
Okay. And now this data was from, 2010 to 2014 or something like that?
2013, yeah.
So that was 6 years ago. Do you think these numbers and your conclusions would still hold up here in 2019?
The conclusion might change, but I see a pretty obvious trend about the distraction playing a more important role in terms of the fatalities right now. Yeah.
Okay. And so is there any more to do on this particular study, or are you going to go ahead and get data that's more recent, like perhaps from 2013 to 2016, to see if there's any change in that? Is that kind of the next step?
Yeah, that's the next step. Yeah, so we are going to look into the most recent data published by the FARS, like a national fatality database, so by the NHTSA. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I know you can't talk about it too much, the driverless cars, but I mean, just in general, can you say anything about what you're looking for? I know you don't have any results yet, but
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of this distracted driving, so driverless car is one of the best solution to the distracted because 90% of the crashes are caused by human error. So distracted driving is also a human error. So that's the biggest like benefit from the driverless cars. So we will definitely see a reduction in the distracted driving when we have like a larger market penetration rate of the kind of the autonomous vehicles.
so technology moves in, and we may have fewer crashes and fewer fatal accidents on the highways, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
If we get there. All right. Well, that's always interesting stuff, Richard Lee. It's always good to see you, and I may want to come out and do a story on this study because I think this is interesting, and I think it'll raise some eyebrows. Kids with cancer often have radiation treatments, and those radiation treatments might have impacts on other parts of their health. Katerina Kavvadia is an associate professor in the UofL School of Dentistry and has studied many facets of this issue. Katerina, welcome.
Well, hello, Mark. I'm happy to be at your show to discuss this issue. It's a sensitive issue for our children. Thankfully, cancer can be treated these days, so we have a lot of people that are childhood cancer survivors, and we were able to investigate and see what is happening into their oral health.
Into their teeth. Well, before we get too much into that, I want to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
you. You're fairly new to the University of Louisville, right?
Yes, I am. Actually, I have been working here for 7 months. I relocated from Europe. I am the program director of the pediatric dentistry department at the UofL, and I came from academic career in Europe.
In Greece, right?
In
You're
Greece,
from
yes,
Greece,
in
but you
Greece.
had studied in the United States and wanted to come back.
Yes,
What was the deal with
I
that?
actually had studied in the United States, and I actually was supported by a grant scholarship from NIH that was supporting people that wanted to go to academia, even international. And I came back years after to give back to this country what they offered me. And I enjoy very much my role here.
Good. You like Louisville?
Louisville is a great place to be, great people, great colleagues, and great university.
All right, very good. Well, everything's great at the University of Louisville, right? Including having you here. So welcome back to the United
Thank you.
States. All right.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about your research. You did, as you said, you looked into kids who have radiation treatment as children and what happens to their teeth later on in life, correct?
Yes.
So what was the research and what'd you find?
Okay, so we looked up on children that had radiation and chemotherapy, because usually this goes together as a combination early in life, which means 6 years and younger. So these children that received significant amount of radiation, of therapeutic radiation, okay, for cancer, might have aberrations in the growth of the teeth. So the teeth don't grow normally. The roots don't grow normally, the crowns don't grow normally, or they have defects. And that has implications for their oral health, because short roots are not normal, so the teeth might be mobile, or even they might even fall out. And when the quality of the crown is not normal either, then we have a big susceptibility to caries, so these teeth can get destroyed very easily.
So is it basically then that the radiation or the chemotherapy destroys the growth of the roots of the teeth? Is that what causes the problem down the road?
Well, we find twice as much as the growth of the root that is affected, and in 30% of the cases, it's the crown. Okay. So the crown of the root is not as significant as the root. The crown of the tooth is not as significant as the root, because the crown, you can fix it. You can put materials like filling materials or caps, and you can fix that. But when the root is short, that you cannot fix. And that has impact on the stability of the tooth and the way that the tooth functions in the mouth, and also on the gingiva that attach on the tooth. So you may have also gingivitis or periodontitis, which is a more advanced gingivitis. It's disease that supports the bone.
Okay. Well, let me reintroduce you here. Katerina Kavvadia is an associate professor in the UofL School of Dentistry and has studied children's health issues involving dentistry. So, just to be clear, is it every kid that has cancer and has to go through these treatments at a young age has these problems with their teeth, or is it just some of them? Or is it just
it's not all of the children, and thankfully not all of the children receive radiation. So for childhood cancer, the most prominent treatment is chemotherapy. Okay. Radiation is given radiation to the face also is what involves the aberration of the growth for the teeth, because if you receive radiation in another part of the body, it doesn't involve the teeth.
So it's like brain cancer or something like that?
Yes, rhinopharyngeal carcinoma, and also those kids that receive the total body radiation for leukemia. So these are a lot. because a lot of the children receive radiation for the central nervous system, and that's total body radiation. Well, the good news is that the anti-cancer treatment has progressed a lot. So new treatments are much milder for tissues and much more targeted to cancer cells. So this will probably stop. So the effect on the teeth, we won't see it anymore after some years. But now we have to face the people that already had it.
Right, so you're talking about the 20 and 30-year-olds that had the old-fashioned radiation and the treatment for cancer.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are having the teeth problems now, right?
15 years old also, you know,
15-year-olds?
you can see that. The earliest they receive the radiation, the highest the chances are that the roots will be affected. It's just that they should be having a very thorough follow-up at the dentist with x-rays to watch what happens with the development of these roots and the prognosis of these teeth.
Yeah.
And it's possible that they can maintain them for many years if they take good care of them. But they have to understand that you really need to be very, very close friends with your dentist, you know.
Again, we're talking with Katerina Kavvadia, who's an associate professor in the UofL School of Dentistry. So, you kind of hit on it a little bit there that they need to be close friends to their dentist, but what about people that are 15 years old and up, had cancer as a child, and they're having some teeth problems? What is the, how can you cure it, or is there any way to, you talked about fillings and those kinds of things, but is there any way to take care of their teeth that may have been damaged by the radiation or the chemotherapy?
Well, you cannot regrow the root. That's done.
That's done.
That's done. But you can probably stabilize the teeth and also make sure that the health of the gingival tissues that support this tooth is optimum. So when you have very good gums, this will help you keep your teeth longer. So that's achieved through intense cleanings at the hygienist and the dentist and follow-up to prevent it when there is a very small problem, to prevent it to progress, to become a major problem.
Are these people more susceptible of their teeth falling out or getting cavities?
They are more susceptible. They might be more susceptible. They are at higher risk. Okay, so that's why they have to be screened and evaluated. And at the University of Louisville, at the pediatric dentistry department, we do have the clinics that we can take care of these children. And we also operate at the Cosaire Children's Hospital, and we can also see patients there.
I guess as we wrap this up then, so give folks an idea of what they should do. How do they track you down or track down some of your dentists to take care of their kids and to make sure that, if they've got a child who's, say, 4 or 5 years old right now who's going through cancer treatment, that they're getting the most targeted cancer treatment potentially that they could get, and B, that in the long run they have care of their dental cavity?
We operate all days at the University of Louisville. We have a downtown clinic and one at the Cosaires, so they can make an appointment and come and see us. And our telephone is on the website. It's very easy to track down. And my colleagues and I and the residents, we will take good care of them. Also, we have excellent colleagues around the state that are pediatric dentists, and they are also trained of taking care of problems like that and guiding them through to have the best oral health possible for their children.
And the bottom line for parents out there that have a kid with cancer is think about the dentistry problem as you move along with that kid's treatment, right?
Of course. Okay. That's a very good message to live on.
Okay. All right, very good. Katerina Kavvadia, Associate Professor in the UofL School of Dentistry. Thanks for being on the show. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Again. Sure.
Thank you.
Was there a link between two European health epidemics more than 500 years ago? Fabian Crespo thinks there might have been. He's an associate professor of anthropology here at the University of Louisville, and he's here now to talk about it. Fabian, good to see you again.
The same here, Mark. Thank you for another invitation. And
well, we had fun last time, so
let's talking about Black Death. By the way, now we are teaching a class on Black Death.
You're teaching
with the chair of the history department, Black Beauty, and us. We are teaching for the first time kind of a joint class on Black Death only.
And I learned last time that most people call it the plague.
Correct. That's okay.
But that's what we're going to call it. Okay. Well, let's talk about. I saw your most recent, I guess, was study or paper or something about how two epidemics way back when, more than 500 years ago, may have actually wound up being sort of good since they were sort of at the same time. So why don't you talk about that?
Yes. Well, in this case, the disease that I'm talking about is leprosy and tuberculosis. What do we know today is there is an interaction between both kind of pathogens, the one behind leprosy and the one behind tuberculosis. One is Mycobacterium leprae and the other one is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the immune system. What do we know today with contemporary data is if a person is exposed in life early to tuberculosis or will get a vaccination, makes sense, with BCG, some people, they will have some protection, makes sense, later if in life they will be exposed to leprosy. So basically, if you have the bad news that you were exposed to TB, well, at least one positive aspect, not for all humans, we are still trying to understand, will get some immunity, makes sense, for a second infection on leprosy. Sometimes you can say, what about luck? No, that person will be exposed to TB and then to leprosy. But in some environments, you have both diseases as endemic, makes sense, conditions. And especially if we are going back in time to, again, as we did with Black Death, to medieval Europe. We must understand that in medieval Europe, Middle Ages, you have this kind of explosion of different factors, people moving from the countryside to the cities, getting exposed to more kind of unhealthy environments, crowded populations. So there is a kind of sense to saying not only you have the plague, bubonic plague and Black Death, but on the top of that you have other diseases ongoing. And people are arguing about leprosy, especially in the Middle Ages, because at least the data is pointing that around 1000 AD, so more or less 1000 years ago, you have information coming from documents, institutions like leper hospitals, that leprosy was becoming endemic in Europe, highly endemic.
It was hitting everybody.
Exactly. And you have, normally when you talk about medieval Europe, either you will talk, if you are talking about epidemics and diseases, people will mention Black Death, and people will talk about leprosy. Makes sense? And also you have institutions, leper hospitals. Right. In England, you have more than hundreds of institutions. But then what happened around 1500 AD, so 500 years later, there is a steady decline of leprosy.
You're trying to figure out why.
Well, many people are trying to figure out, because one thing that is very intriguing is still 1500s, you don't have any antimicrobials. Makes sense? You don't have at least antibiotics.
Antibacterial soap or antibiotics.
Exactly. So one of the questions that people are trying to answer, how on earth such endemic disease, such leprosy, was endemic for more than 5 centuries and then going into steady decline. So you have many arguments. I want to be clear here. It's not only TB or tuberculosis, but one of the things that some colleagues, they did it is, well, what do we know today that people, especially in some areas where leprosy and TB are endemic, if they were exposed, makes sense, to TB, they will get some protection. What if this could explain the decline of leprosy in medieval Europe? What? Well, you know that in 1516 was the peak of TB, and maybe that was helping the decline. You need more than 2 factors. So what I'm trying to understand here is, for you to have an exposure to TB and then acquire some immunity, also you need to be a relatively healthy person. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yes, please.
Right, but if you want to, we'll talk about how this might impact, current medicine.
Correct.
And the diseases we may face in the world today. But the bottom line is that it's possible. That's one of the theories as to why you may have seen leprosy, the instances of leprosy, suddenly take a sharp decline in Europe, right? Is that they
exactly
that they were exposed to TB and the antibodies or whatever in TB somehow helped them get over.
Yeah, but what I'm arguing,
them.
what I'm arguing in the paper, in the publication is, okay, that could be one factor. But for you, it's like, suppose that you're exposed to one disease when you were a child, makes sense? And your immune system will remember that. Well, technically, you will get some protection if you are re-exposed to the same disease. This is arguing maybe if you're exposed to another disease similar, still the immune system will recognize the enemy. But what we are trying to argue in the paper, we need to be careful on that. Because for you to have a healthy immune system, makes sense, healthy enough for you to remember things, you need to provide that immune system a nice context, makes sense? You need to eat well, makes sense, have a healthy life, because if not the immune system, what I'm doing with my students, sometimes the analogy, how many things do you remember in life? It depends on how busy you are, makes sense? The busier you are, you will remember a few things. So what we need to understand is not everybody was able to be exposed to TB and then later get immunity against leprosy. We need to factor many things. And that's the thing that I can use to translate to modern medicine today.
We're talking with Fabian Crespo. He's an associate professor of anthropology at the University of Louisville, and we're talking about some of his studies about how maybe some epidemics work off each other or help each other. So let's take that into modern times then. I used the example at the start of the show about, well, if you have the flu perhaps, or there's a flu epidemic, could that somehow maybe stop a hepatitis epidemic? I mean, is that, if you're extrapolating this out, taking that theory to its logical conclusion, is, could one epidemic now, if we have a big flu epidemic, suddenly help years down the road, maybe protect people from something else?
I would say normally this will be the case if the pathogens that you are just calling the flu or maybe another epidemic, they are similar. So the immune system will have some memory.
Right.
It's like if you have a fight with somebody or an enemy, if you have another enemy, they should be similar for you to remember and identify that they are sharing something in common. That could be the case. I don't know with any kind of infection disease. What could be also the case that people are trying to analyze if maybe one disease is in some way enhancing, makes sense, improving your immune system, is training the immune system. The immune system, the more that we are learning, needs to be trained, makes sense? Since we are born, makes sense, the immune system needs to be exposed to things. But the point that we need to understand is how much exposure the immune system needs. And it could be the case that maybe a specific epidemic can be, how do you say in English, boosting, makes sense, improving your immune system. But we need to be careful how much, because then you can have two issues. Sometimes you can exhaust too much the immune system, that if you have a second epidemic, it will not be prepared, or it could be the other way. You don't have a second epidemic, and then you are dealing with an immune system that is very active, so we can be facing another consequence, that is what we see today, chronic inflammatory diseases, overreactive immune system.
Right. All right. We only got a couple minutes left here with Fabian Crespo. You want to talk about syndemics. I don't even know what a syndemic is, so why don't you tell me what's a syndemic?
Well, syndemic, let me put the definition. Syndemic, you can break down, is CYN, that is coming from synergism, makes sense? Synergic epidemic.
Okay.
So you put like the demic and the CYN.
So what does that mean, though?
Means that you can have two epidemics that they will act, makes sense? Normally, we define syndemics when two epidemics will make things worse.
Okay.
They will not be.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
And we
they happen at the same time.
Yes, and that will be worse. Meaning, and we did it with HIV tuberculosis, for example. The HIV epidemic, pandemic, in some way was creating some kind of immune suppression that in some cases, people with TB dormant, people will have that reactivation of TB. So now we did it also with HIV and hepatitis. But now some colleagues are looking at maybe syndemics is more complex than that. Makes sense? Maybe it's not only the interaction, negative interaction of two epidemics, but could be also the negative interaction or not, positive, negative, of many different factors. Meaning you are exposed to one epidemic, how is your life? How much is your stress? Makes sense? How healthy is your diet? How much context, socially speaking, do you have to have
stuff involved?
So syndemics is getting a big equation that now we are learning, and also this is inviting different kind of disciplines. So medicine now is aware for understanding why some epidemics are devastating in some areas and not in other areas. You can say, well, because of what? Access to medicine, but it's not only enough. Makes sense? You need to factor another social factors, ecological factors, biological factors, and then you will create a whole equation of different components. And that approach is what different colleagues are calling now syndemics. At the beginning was interaction of two diseases, but now people are arguing, why not adding more stuff, makes sense, on your recipe? And that will be like a syndemic approach.
Well, it sounds like you got plenty to talk to with your anthropology students this semester.
Oh, I hope, and I hope that they will have the patience.
Yes. I hope you got plenty to talk to. All right. Fabian Crespo, good to have you on the show again.
The same here. Thank you for another invitation.
All right, that'll about do it for this edition of UofL Today with Mark Hebert, which you can hear every Monday night at 7 and Sunday morning at 8 on Cards Radio 790 WKRD. You can also listen to the podcast of the shows on SoundCloud or watch the programs on Metro TV and KETKY throughout the week. Check out all the UofL news, videos, and events at UofLnews.com. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards.